In this video, I'm going to do a quick review of the drum machine programming exercise that we did in class. Okay, so I've already got Reason opened up. I'm going to go to the Create menu, and I'm going to add Redrum Drum Computer. And when you load Redrum, it comes already loaded with a patch. And the patch, in this case, is several drum devices loaded into each channel strip. Now you can trigger those from the keyboard, but remember when you're doing it that only the 10 keys will trigger each drum sound. There are 10 different drum channels here, and each of those is triggered by one key on the keyboard. So if you're playing a MIDI keyboard controller that has lots and lots of notes, remember that most of those notes won't trigger sounds. So you have to find the right or the correct 10 keys to trigger these 10 sounds. And usually it's the low end of the keyboard, but if your keyboard is transposed up or down, you might have to shift the octave until you figure out which keys trigger each drum sound. Another way to trigger them with a mouse is by clicking on these buttons up here. Etc. And you can load a completely different drum set down here in the patch browser. And I click on that Browse Patch button. Then I go to the Reason Factory Sound Bank. I look for Redrum drum kits. And I can choose a style that I like. I'm just going to load a standard rock kit. And now different drums in each of these channel strips. Okay, I'm triggering these drums to figure out which drum is in which position. I can also look at the display and probably figure out what type of a drum it is. I'll zoom in on this one. We see that it says BD, which probably stands for bass drum. And then this next one is snare drum. Let's play them and see if that sounds right. Bass drum. Yep. Snare drum. Right. And you can see that this particular kit has several different types of snare drums. Let's listen to them. So they're probably samples of different snare drums or maybe different mic positions, etc. There are lots of reasons for the drums to sound different. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to very quickly program a pattern using a combination of the drums that are loaded into these channel strips, the select buttons at the bottom of each channel strip, and the 16 step buttons at the bottom of the Redrum Drum Computer. I'll zoom out so you can see those again. Here are the 16 step patterns. Okay, now a little bit of music theory. Reason defaults to 4/4 time. So when you start up a new Reason song file, it's going to assume the music you want to create is in 4/4 time, 4 beats per measure, and a quarter note equals 1 beat. So if that is true, if our sequence, which it is currently set to 4/4 time, and we have our drum pattern set to respond to 16 different steps, and our resolution set so that each step button corresponds to a 16th note, then these buttons here represent one measure of music, 4 beats. 1 is a beat, and then we have the remaining 3/16 notes, or if you learn to count this way, 1, E, and A. Button 5 is where beat 2 begins, 2, E, and A. 9 is where 3 begins, 3, E, and A. And button 13, or step 13, is where beat 4 begins, 4, E, and A. I'm going to record a kick drum, so I've selected channel strip number 1, which has this kick loaded into it, and I'm going to press run. No sound yet. I want to record a standard 4 on the floor kick drum pattern, meaning I'll have one kick at the beginning of each of 4 beats. So beat 1 starts on step 1. And as the loop, the pattern loops again and again, you'll hear that first beat. I want to be on each beat of the measure, so that's 1. My next step will be on step 5. 1, E, and A. So beat 2 starts on step 5. Beat 3 on 9. Beat 4 on 13. Now that sounds pretty robotic because they're all exactly equal in volume level, in intensity. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to change the dynamic level. I'll shift this up to hard, and I'll make the first beat louder than the others. Good. And now I'm going to make beats 2 and 4 softer than the others. So I selected soft on the dynamic control, and I'll just click again on those 2 beats. So beat 1 is loud, beat 3 is sort of loud, and 2 and 4 are soft. Let's add a snare part. The snare, remember, is here. The snare I'm going to use is in channel strip 2. So I'll select 2. And you notice I never stopped the run. The bass play part is still playing. When I clicked over the select button to channel 2, all of my steps are now blank. The steps, if I go back to channel 1, I can see which steps were programmed. Now I'm going to program steps or hits for channel strip 2, which is our snare drum. I'm going to make that play on the beginning of beat 2 and the beginning of beat 4. Standard rock and roll backbeat. So let's count the steps. 1, E, and a 2. E, and a 3, E, and a 4. So I've got hits on 5 and 13. Let's make them louder. Okay, so I'm building up my standard 4 on the floor rhythm pattern. This is a really, really basic rock pattern. I'm going to look for a hi-hat now. I'm looking at the names. Toms, we know what tom-toms are. Usually you'll have high, low, and sometimes high, low, and medium toms. Here are hi-hats. This says HH1, HH1V2. Let's see what they sound like. Sounds like a closed hi-hat. That sounds like an open hi-hat. I'm going to select the closed hi-hat, which is here in channel strip 8, so I'll select 8. And then I'm going to put a hi-hat hit on every 16th note. All of these buttons, I'm going to light them up. I'll put it on medium dynamic level, and I'm just going to click on the first one and drag across. I've got hi-hat hits on every 16th note of every beat. And it sounds like a robot drummer. Let's see if we can add some dynamic variation to improve that. Change the dynamic to hard, and I'll put hard hits on the first beat, third beat of the measure, and then I'll mix up some of these medium hits with soft variants. Whatever sounds good to you. If you choose something and you say, oh, I don't like what I just did, just know that you can always undo it or change it. I could select a different level Go over one of those soft hits, make it medium again. If I don't like that, I can click it one more time to just turn it off. Etc. If you want to turn everything off, drag across the whole thing, and then drag across the whole thing again, and you can get rid of those hi-hat hits. Remember also that if you were to delete something and regret that choice later, you can always do Command and Z on a Macintosh, Z is in zebra, to undo your last change. And Reason will step back through those changes. So I'm just repeatedly hitting Command Z, and one step at a time I'm undoing my changes. Right? There you go. That's how you can pretty simply record basic drum patterns in ReDrum. And this works for most hardware drum machines too. The button pressing sequence may be different, but it's the same basic concept for programming patterns in software or hardware drum machines. That's it for this tutorial.